So we know the first one we're going to talk about is number 3, which I have read is, many people have said is chronologically is first.
Yeah, and so the Opus 18 quartets were published in a group of 6, and that's that notation where if you see Opus 18 number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, Opus 18 was sort of the volume that they were released in, and then you have 6 quartets within it.
Yeah.
And so this was published as 18 number 3, but you're right, the Opus 18s were not published in the order in which they were composed.
Right.
And that's pretty interesting.
Well, that might be why Ballardet chose this, obviously. They're giving us this opportunity to do a real thorough look at Beethoven's range.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking forward to this.
Yeah. And among the Opus 18 quartets, I would say number 3 is really quite classical with a capital C.
But I read this,
Yeah. And for example, Opus 18 number 4, the C minor, sounds a lot more like midlife version of him. Its storminess, its heroic nature. But 18.3 is a bit Mozart. Yeah, it's kind of mannered.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're in church sitting very tall and very still.
Yeah. And what I find really fun about this piece is we're sitting there, we're thinking, okay, all right, classical style, lovely. And I think the whole narrative structure of the piece is meant for us to put a question mark over that sense of classical rightness.
Okay.
He, in the first movement and in the last movement especially, he's creating this trajectory of planting a problem into the music. Right? I say problem as though it's bad, but music without problems is boring music. It's an invention. It's not a real problem. And Beethoven's planting these problems in the first movement. You hear this very classical opening, something very much like you might hear in late Mozart or something along those lines. It's lyrical. The chord progressions and such are somewhat predictable. There's nothing to shake you out of your seat. And then as we go through the movement, things start to feel a little bit strange because the exposition, which is the exposure of the main themes that we hear, that goes along pretty conventionally. I think, okay, all is well here. And then in the development, which is sort of like the toppings on the sandwich, where the composer has a freak out, sandbox time, do what you want, Beethoven starts to. And he starts to give us these false returns to the exposition. And traditionally, that's called the recapitulation.
Right.
We have the exposition, the exposure, the development, sandbox time, and then a recap of the exposition where we feel like we're home.
Got it.
Beethoven takes that recap and he starts to play with us.
Is this what I read, he's doing some joking? Is this what you're talking about? I see. So I see what he's sort of fiddling, no pun intended, fiddling with.
And it's not even a pun. There's going to be a lot of fiddling.
Yes, fiddling with that path that we think we're taking.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about expectations and breaking the expectations. And in this case, it's not particularly unusual for Mozart to give us a little false recap, joke a little bit, and then say, okay, here it is for real.
Right.
Beethoven's doing that 3, 4, 5 times, where we hear something we think we recognize, and then he messes it up. And then it's wrong. The plane fails to land. So we take this other little diversion, and it's like, okay, this is it this time. Nope. And here we go again. And in doing so, he's unveiling harmonies and keys and abominations of those original tunes that we wouldn't expect.
So I want to offer another thought. So I know you said you were talking about it being a problem, that you were saying this, but this makes it sound bad. Would it be another lens to use, saying that, is it more of a question? And maybe he's just saying, well, is this the answer? No. Is that the answer? I don't know. Is that maybe what...
I love that. Yeah. And there's so many different ways to think about it. For me, I think of it as implanting a problem that gets addressed later.
Okay.
But I love that sense of we're asking a question. There's something unresolved about it that he's planting, and then it comes back. Great.
And figuring things out.
Yeah. Or like a hunch that gets developed later. Like we're on a little investigation now to figure out what that was about.
And we get to see how he thought about it.
Yeah. And what's really cool is he doesn't really give us that answer until the last movement.
Oh, of course.
You know, like Mozart would have been a good boy and he would have created a problem in the first movement somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pretty much rely on him tying up the problem by the end of the movement. Beethoven's blowing that out and saying, actually, here's a superstructure. And the middle movements of this piece, I don't want to say they're conventional.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that pejoratively.
Mm-hmm.
But he's putting us back in our comfort zone in those middle movements. And then the last movement comes around. Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, yeah, I totally forgot that something's afoot. Something's amiss.
Right. Got all relaxed. Got all... Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
Okay,
right.
we know what we're doing now.
No. Yeah.
Get it.
And in a very classical way. Like Brahms would hit you over the head with it. Late Beethoven would hit you over the head with it with a baseball bat. Mm-hmm. Early Beethoven is doing it a little more subtly. That if you're not listening for like your expectations and your sense of, oh, here's this theme. Oh, it just got broken. Oh, here's this theme that usually comes next, but it's in the wrong order. You know, so it's a little bit of nuance. It might help to understand the structure that you would expect, but it's definitely not necessary.
So is the adjective, what he's doing, maybe like a little cheeky?
Totally cheeky.
Okay.
Totally cheeky, a little bit blustery, and definitely childlike.
Okay.
In a really charming way. Let's take a look at the opening of the first movement, actually.
Sure.
Because I think to listen to the later Beethoven and understand what's so crazy about it, let's take a look at sort of a prototype example of classical style that he gives us here in 1803. So what's really interesting if we look at the score is we have a texture here that's very common in the world of Haydn, Mozart, and other classical string quartets. You'll notice the lower three voices. Yeah. We've got some harmonic padding, a foundation for the soloist voice or the melodic voice to sit on top of.
And then some sharing, it looks like a little bit.
Exactly. And that's exactly also where we can distinguish that this is Beethoven in a classical style versus, for example, this is Haydn's classical style.
Right.
In Haydn, we'd see less of this passing around, less of this sharing of the texture. Mm-hmm. In the world of Beethoven, even though it sounds very classical, there are these little hints that it's him. And another thing that's really fascinating about, you know, the classical style is the way that melodies are constructed. Mm-hmm. So we have this very first melody here. Let's forget about the texture. And I had a professor once who described the prototype structure of a melody so eloquently. What goes up must come down. Right? Here we see that. Now the whole project of that melody is to get us back down from G back down to A. Sure enough. And then a little tail where you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, right. And so everything about this is prototypical. Like, it's beautiful. That's not meant to diminish it. But everything about this is as it should be.
So he's meeting our expectations at this point.
He is. We're sitting there going, lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Take another sip of whatever you're drinking.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then, you know, what's really subtle but interesting is who picks up that tune next?
The viola.
The viola. Haydn probably wouldn't have done that.
Mozart might have.
Mozart might have. But this is our first hint that there's something a little more unusual going on.
Because the lead is taken by the viola and then second violin.
An inner voice. Right. And then it gets passed up the second violin. And we've got a really brief crescendo going on there for like 2 to 4 measures, which is pretty quick. This is something that's an absolute style hallmark of Beethoven throughout his life, is vivid, rigorous, exaggerated, oftentimes sudden dynamic changes or mood changes.
Oh, yes. Dynamics were,
Yeah, it's like your 6-year-old jumping out at you from behind the corner or like stepping on a Lego in the middle of the night. That sort of energy, right? And we start to see this here. We've got like a really quick kind of blooming of energy straight away.
Got it.
So he gives the melody to us in the first violin in an almost generic sort of way.
And then almost we go from forte to piano, basically. Yes.
Exactly.
So
right away he's saying, okay, we're in style, we're being good, but it's me.
Yeah.
Hello. He's peeking out, right? And we have this like florid little violin cadenza that happens. Yeah. And again, it's just too soon for that. Even though it's so clearly in the classical style, it's too soon. This kind of music needs longer. You have to earn stuff like that. You have to earn a violin cadenza. You have to develop it enough that the structure, that the texture has time to sit there, and then you break it down. But he's just immediately moving us into textures that we haven't earned yet.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
So he's moving the pieces around a little differently, and maybe he's just saying, okay, I'm not going to wait for that whole introduction thing. I'm just going to give it to you right now.
Yeah. So like another way I think of it is he's almost discarding formality. Like it sounds like the style, but he's thinking, just let's get on with it.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
It's beautiful, but a little bit impatient.
I was actually going to say, do you think he's being impatient? And I thought it's a little rude to Beethoven, but yeah, that's what it kind of...
he's totally impatient, right? And he should be. Like, he didn't know this, but he was going to go deaf halfway through his life. Like, yeah, bro should have been pretty impatient, even though he didn't know that. But yeah, and so it's just a little fiddly. And then as we keep going on here, take a look at these textures that come as we approach the second theme here.
You've got some harmonies going on.
Exactly, and harmonies that are really quite rhythmic in nature, which we do see in Haydn and Mozart. There's nothing weird about that. But look how frequently those rhythms are like passed around, the layering of them is changed. Look at how often it's crescendoing and diminuendoing. Like the level of detail is, again, it's just moving around really quickly, really fast.
And it looks like some of it is even, I mean, I don't know what to call it, but I know from having been in piano, da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee, it looks like it's really more supportive, not always necessarily the melody part. Right?
So you have active things that are not necessarily the biggest focal point.
Yes.
And one way we could describe that is the texture is thickening.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so, like,
visually,
one page of the score. Yes. Yeah, one page of the score, we go from, like, very Haydnish texture, bottom of the page, whoa.
Bam. Yeah.
A lot of activity.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can also see, too, like in a very general term, when we see pitches that are not in the key signature starting to populate the score all over the place, that tells us we're on the move as far as harmony goes. Yes. So we're either seeing harmonies that are not correct in the key appearing, or the composer is modulating and changing the key and moving us to a different center of gravity.
Yes.
And, Haydn and Mozart would have taken quite a while to prepare something like that, relatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
one question, so I'm spotting. So is this high of a note typical at that point too?
That's a really good question that I hadn't even thought about. I mean, sort of. Yeah, that's a high G, right?
Yeah.
And we see this trend throughout music history that as musicians get better, the music is able to get more challenging, and virtuosity turns into one of these things that indicate the progress of time.
Right.
That is 100% going on here. So we have the violins soaring up. This isn't higher than like Mozart or Haydn would have written.
Right.
But it might have been something that belonged in a much more dramatic moment in the piece, and Beethoven's rolling up with it.
And we're only in measure what?
Like 30-something. Yeah. Right, exactly.
He's like, he's pulling all the stops out right away. He's like, I can just throw everything in the toolbox, right?
It's just like, who needs to wait around for this? Here we go. Yeah. And then, if we jump ahead a little bit too, this is another super Beethovenian thing. This SF thing right there.
The sforzando?
Sforzando. Yeah. So that's something that like Haydn or Mozart would have used in a very choice moment. Like, whoa, here's the climax of an entire section or passage, or something particularly weird. Beethoven, we're on the second page. Clearly, this is not a climax, but he's giving us these indications of impact and intensity. And actually, there's another little hint here in this passage that we're looking at Beethoven, which is as he goes through his life, he takes meter. He takes rhythm, the sense of groove, and he kind of makes a project out of either removing our sense of regularity like that, or distorting it to mess with us. And we're starting to see that here because we have these sforzandi, which are intense accents, emphases.
Yes.
The meter is 4/4.
But we have some
Where are
triplets.
those sforzandis?
Yes. They're in the mid of on the upbeat, right?
Right. They're on the wrong beat. They're on the
Yes.
wrong pulse. So we get this immediate sense of like, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Beethoven, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I was just going to say.
3,
Yes.
Whoa. What, like falling downstairs.
Yes.
And this is another one of these things that we can start to expect later in the piece. Like, it's one of these problems, questions that he has to grapple with later in order to have a reason for putting it in here.
I can almost imagine him sitting there writing. He's like, okay, well, what if I do this?
Yeah. I've really messed with them. Let's see what
How
happens.
about we do that?
Yeah. Right. And something that I enjoy thinking about the classical style is there are expectations for how things should pan out, or like there are patterns at least.
Yes.
And like the intentionality back then of having to like put some ink on your quill and write down something weird.
Mm-hmm.
You had to have really meant it. Like the act of composing a detail was an investment.
Yes.
Right? And to revoke that detail, you've had to scratch it out. It's a problem for your publisher. And so stuff like this, like the mindfulness that went into creating these problems, can't be questioned.
So he had to be committed.
Everything was intentional.
Yes.
Everything was intentional. And that's, I think, what gives us license to drill into such detail.
Well, I think what's interesting, even though I don't hear it, I know it, but even just seeing the marking, sforzando, I can already just feel that, going. My part of me is just like knowing what that is going to be heard like.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I haven't really seen a score like this before.
Really?
I have because I play viola, but they're not nearly as complicated because I'm still very new as a violist.
Uh-huh.
So this is, I would never have encountered such complexity that would, warrant such a interesting conversation.
Yeah, it's cool. and like, even if you don't know how to read music, you do, but
yes.
Many attendees may not. Reading a score, like, you don't have to understand what the notes mean in order to kind of roughly be able to follow along with what's going on.
Right.
And if you're curious and you're okay with looking like a dork, I highly recommend printing one off and bringing it for like one of the pieces, because it is this borderline visually artistic representation of what you're hearing, and it can be sort of an attention anchor. And it does. There are things that stand out visually that kind of guide the way you hear the piece too. Like, one more detail in here would be like, look at like this cello.
Yeah.
Has a freak out, right? And right. This is fairly virtuosic stuff for a cellist. And also we have a forte piano, sempre staccato, which is a lot of detail, a lot of information, more nuance than we would have gotten from Haydn or Mozart, for example.
And sempre is always, right?
Always.
Yes.
Yeah, always staccato. Like, there's real precision there. There's a lot more detail here that would reveal this score as Beethoven if you looked at it without even hearing it or without even knowing what the piece was. You would see that these sort of classical textures, but with more detail that indicate the weirdnesses.
So I hate to say something rather naive or what. I guess, I never really thought about the composition process.
Mm-hmm.
I really never. Obviously, he had to put so much thought into this. It couldn't have always just been, well, let's just try this and see everything. It sounds like he really did have a plan, even though you could argue he might have sometimes not had a plan.
Right. Well, yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And I think Beethoven and Mozart are a really interesting dichotomy to look at, because in his time, Mozart lived a little more than half as long as Beethoven did, but he composed, please don't fact check me. He composed like twice as much music more than that, I think, like 5 times as much music, or at least
Yes.
published number of things.
Yes.
And lived half as long. And Beethoven was really well known for revising, drafting, taking a long time to publish something because he was so intentional about the way he was breaking expectations, is one way to think about it. He was a total control freak.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Is he like maybe a little OCD? Because that was my first feeling when I'm looking at that and thinking about your description of his writing.
Yeah, Beethoven's manuscripts are very messy. Mm-hmm. Lots of things scratched out, or he'd have like a version that he would submit to the publisher and say like, no.
Give it back.
Just kidding. You would like completely restructure it. It had to be right before he was ready to let her rip. And, Mozart, on the other hand, like we have someone who really understood these patterns of composing and largely stayed on those tracks, right, and would diverge and create jokes and create problems in a way that was a little bit closer to the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost feels more intuitive or more improvised in the world of Mozart, whereas in Beethoven it feels crafted.
Would this be an odd thing to say? But I would say that thinking about the music of Mozart and Beethoven, that do you think that maybe Mozart felt a little freer to experiment, and maybe Beethoven was kind of fighting himself a little bit with some of that?
Could be. I mean,
this is a strange thing to come up with. I know,
but all we can do is speculate, right?
Well, I see, and I never realized that. Yes.
Why were the way they were? A few variables come to mind. Mozart was making his money. He wasn't making enough money to live super comfortably, but he was making his money. Every time you published, you got a paycheck. You published, you got a pay. You published, you got a pay. You published, you got a paycheck. And he was writing a lot of opera.
Yes.
Write an opera, gets played, you get
money,
kickbacks, right? Like, so output was important to him. Beethoven is relying more heavily on a patronage model. So he has people who are, in some cases salarying him or giving him a much bigger chunk of money with maybe other quality of life assurances.
That makes sense.
Which means, okay, I can sit on this project a little bit longer until it's really the way I want it to be. Or maybe he's writing something for one of his aristocratic patrons to perform at a house concert. So they're going to want him to take his sweet time so he can make them look good. Or make the players they're inviting into their home look good, for example.
So then that sort of turns at 180 what I just said, because the model you're saying, that means Beethoven had more freedom than Mozart did.
Right? Like, what is freedom?
Yes, I know. I mean, I realize it's a very broad term, but I guess that's just what I'm thinking about, comparing them. But is there anything else on this part, on this first part that you're going to talk about?
I think that's the gist of it, right? And then
this sforzando thing happens again.
Yeah, right. And this is one of these things that you're noticing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be some reason he's doing this. He's doing this weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
the same dynamic changes that you talked about.
Right. And he's all over. And let's kind of forge ahead a little bit too. All right. And by the way, listeners, whenever you see that repeat sign in the middle of a classical period work, that's usually an indication you're moving from the exposition into the development.
Yes.
Because stylistically, the exposition could be repeated to refamiliarize you and give you another listening of that important stuff. And so you'll notice straight away in the development, look at all of these accidentals. Yes. All of these applied note changes.
Ooh,
right?
Yes.
Textbook development stuff. This is our opportunity to go kind of out of orbit with the harmonies we're visiting, to kind of leave the comfort of home and then come spiraling back really dramatically. And so sure enough, here we go.
So you're saying, we have flats, we have some sharps, we have some naturals, which are against the original key signature. So you're saying there is lots of play going on.
Exactly. And take a look at what happens at the beginning of the development. Do you recognize that?
At the beginning.
Exactly.
Yes.
At the beginning of the development, the sandbox, he gives you what seems like it's going to be just like a very simple reiteration of the original theme.
But we've
Ba
got
ya da 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 dee da tom. Ti da 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 dee da ta. It's in the wrong key.
right. I get it
It's
now.
completely in the wrong key. It is far from the right key. So, again, he's planting this problem into the music that, you don't need to understand how the music works, but it requires a certain level of being observant in order to realize, oh yeah, I heard that already.
But
Something about this is wrong.
it's not exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we start to see these classical textures again, and then just take a look at all the vigorousness that happens here in the viola.
Even again, yes.
It's like the musicians are fighting in the string quartet.
So the viola's doing the sforzando, but nobody else.
Yeah, and look, the second violinist is having an episode.
Yeah, it's like everybody's just kind of spazzing out.
Right. Nobody's conforming
No.
correctly to their.
What are they doing here?
Yeah, but yeah. It's like, okay, chill. Right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, and not only that, but Beethoven writes fortissimo. Again, not something that Mozart and Haydn never wrote, but something they were less consistent with.
Yeah, and then we go to like pianissimo.
Pianissimo. Right.
Yes.
Okay, yes, textbook Beethoven. Massive climax.
Just
shut up. Yeah.
Yes.
Right, like totally weird. Totally weird. So he's setting the stage, and then, right? Oh, here, let's take a look.
Okay.
Straight away, do you recognize this sforzando melody? Jump pa dee da dum pee da 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 dum ba dum ba dum pee dum ba dum pa dee da da dum. That's from the exposition.
Okay.
Right? That's our second theme. And when we get there, we think, oh, we're home. We're back.
No weird stuff.
Woo! Yeah. All right, I've got my second theme again. Just even visually.
Yeah, I can tell.
You can see fortissimo, sforzando.
This.
It looks like pillars in the score.
Yes.
Where he's saying no, 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 no.
What a great way to put
Okay,
that.
I guess we weren't in the recap. Sure, fine, whatever. And he does this over and over again, where you're like, this was the final cadence in the exposition, and you're like, oh. Hilarious, right? That's it.
Yes.
We're coming home now.
Yes.
No. And he's saying it more emphatically with these silences in there.
Yes, because it's like, yes, very much so.
Right. He has to convey the harshness with which he's kind of breaking protocols here. And that's the biggest dramatic feature of this first movement is he creates the sense that this is going to be conventional. And then, what is this, like 6 to 8 minutes into the piece? Suddenly it's very unconventional. And it does not at all do what it's supposed to. That's very Beethovenian.
Okay, and so this, chronologically, being the first one he wrote, he just kind of went, how people talk about, looking outside the box. It kind of seems like he's like destroying the box.
He did that. Yeah, he did that from the very beginning.
That's what I'm saying. He was just like, no box, no.
Beethoven as a child must have been.
Yeah.
He didn't fit into behavioral structures, I'm sure.
He probably went through more than one nanny.
And piano teacher, and sure it was endless. But
that's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. And then, we get into the second movement, Andante con moto, beautiful lyrical thing. That's as it should be. Slow movement comes second. And then the third movement, we get into this very dance-like, jokish kind of it's like elegante. So here we go. Welcome to the ballroom. We'd expect kind of a minuet or some sort of dance to come. Sure enough, that's what we get. And there are hints it's Beethoven. Right? He never gives himself up, but there's nothing too crazy about this. And then the last movement, it's an absolute barn burner. It's like showing up to a country dance in the middle of rural Oklahoma or something. It's an absolute fiddle fest. Everybody is so busy. I mean, just look at this texture at the beginning of the movement. We have the first violin. Actually, it sounds like that I have no idea when that was composed.
Right.
It'd be fascinating if he was actually quoting that. Again, don't fact check. I don't know that that's true.
You're just supposed.
I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah, but it's similar. And then the second violin jumps in. Well, I can do it too. And then the viola and the cello just take it over.
They're just like, okay, let us try. Yeah. Yeah.
We got this. Totally not their role. Totally not their role. In opera, there's a term Fach, which is like, there are certain roles or certain expectations for a role that a soprano might play. The diva, the damsel, rage aria, or something like that, right? Like, and then it like breaks an expectation when that role does something else.
Right.
Same thing's going on here in the string quartet. Like the cello and the viola are your meaty, caramelicious bass stuff that everybody else just dances on top of, right? That's what they do.
Not
and
there.
He's just instantly like, nah, you guys go for it, fiddle away. And that just sets the tone for the whole movement.
Well, do you think it could have even been just practical because you said how busy and how virtuosic this was? Maybe he was like, okay, they're going to be dead. We're going to have to let these others take over.
Yeah, right. It's theatrical in a pretty simple way. It's cool. Yes. Yeah. And then again, we've just got like this gesture that comes at sort of the end of the first phrase. And actually here, I'm not allowed to look at this. Oh. Right? We're going to do a little like rhythmic dictation moment here.
All right.
Right? So if you were to sing little snippets of 2 notes at a time, da 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 da. Here's the beat, and here's the beat, and here's the beat, and here's the beat, and here. What does he do?
He's doing against the beat again.
Da 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 da, and he's doing it really aggressively and loudly.
Get it?
Right? He
did the same thing, just in a little different way.
He's taking a very regular dance-like vibe and completely distorting it and turning our expectation for like, oh, I understand what the meter is, and throwing that out the window and saying, no, the emphasis is here and here and here and here, and the like very tame version of what he does later in life. And
so he already just started with that kind of mindset.
Completely.
Just got better at it.
Yeah, or more brazen with it.
More brazen with it, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this whole last movement, so rhythmically it's fabulous, texture / virtuosity wise.
Right.
So exciting to watch everybody freaking out on it. And then the turns that the harmony takes.
Okay.
Bananas. Totally bananas, right? Like he planted that seed in the first movement that we can flick in and out of the right world of harmony really fast. And he does it a couple times there in really choice places. Here, it is all over the place. He saturated it, almost as if to say, like, you thought that was weird? Check this out. And it's just, he's finishing phrases on a harmony that's so distant from the key he was pretending to be in. And it's like being put in a blender.
So as a performer yourself, as a violinist, I mean, if you were going to pick which part, would you pick violin 1 or violin 2? Would there be any difference for you?
If I played all 4 instruments equally well, and I don't, okay, and I don't, or all 3 instruments, it would be extremely difficult to choose. It would be impossible to choose because of the sort of equality almost that he's built into this.
Yes.
He's really turned the quartet into an organism in a way that is sort of hard to conceive of when you have a solo voice and 3 others. And so I couldn't choose. I absolutely couldn't choose.
And that's a terrific answer, because that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, and that's kind of a fun way to think about the movement, too, is every single person being like, no, my instrument's the coolest. No, my part's the coolest. And it's just, and then the piece is over and you're like, you're all the coolest. Okay, good job.
You say that probably never happens in a quartet itself. Like, no, I'm the coolest.
Yeah, no one never.
Oh, never.
It's very athletic. It's really exciting.
It's going to be a very different listen now for me.
I hope.
Absolutely.
So just ask yourself, what am I expecting? what am I expecting? What am I expecting? What am I expecting? And listening with that kind of template allows you to feel the surprises.
So, okay, I'm going to tell you, I'm like exhausted already because.
Well, just wait.
No, I just mean that was just like a lot to really absorb, you know, and it is great to absorb all that.